Hello and welcome to Wednesday Warfare. Well, it's still called that as long as at least one of the shows airs on a Wednesday, where I review NXT and AEW Dynamite back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. As always, like what you like, don't be a dick. Let's begin. The match for the vacated NXT Championship opens this week's show as Finn Balor and Adam Cole, the co-winners of last week's four-man Iron Man match, which was supposed to determine the new champion, face off again in singles action here. It's essentially the finals of that matchup. I'm not going to go into a blow-by-blow account of this one. This is, though, it's a fantastic match. I mean, as an opener, it's stellar, but as a match itself for the championship, it's great. Finn and Adam Cole, both awesome in the ring, had all the hallmarks of a classic, high-stakes NXT match, lots of near falls, escalating drama, and so forth. They each kick out of each other's finishers at different points. Ultimately, Finn hits a 1916 off the top rope to win, which, yeah, that move would probably do it. So, yeah, it's good to see Finn back on top at NXT. When he first came back, I was really concerned for what his trajectory was going to be, because oh my god, the top level of NXT right now at that moment was so top heavy. I thought there's no way he can break into that right now with everything else going on at that time. And I think with enough circumstances kind of falling the way they did in the last couple of months, it really kind of opened up for Finn to come back into that and kind of slide into that top spot again. He was always kind of on the bubble, on the periphery of the upper tier NXT when he came back right away, but I think this is kind of his shot to get back to that point. I think for him to be the champion again is great. People kind of dog on it, because he's this old and it's the developmental brand. It's not developmental anymore. So it's time to abandon that mindset. It's been a long time to abandon that whole developmental mindset with NXT. And so Finn as champion, I think, is the right call. We get a promo from Rhea Ripley on Mercedes Martinez in regards to their cage match later on, where she says she will show Mercedes why she's called the Nightmare. Elsewhere, we see Robert Stone backstage, and it looks like he's about to beat up Shotzi Blackheart's tank with a baseball bat, but then Shotzi shows right up to make the save. Decks Stone, Aaliyah jumps her from behind, and they fall through a curtain into Io Shirai when she's mid-photo shoot. So then Shotzi and Io beat up both Aaliyah and Robert Stone in the ring. Some stereo flying maneuvers, very fun stuff there. But then Shotzi's got the women's championship belt and kind of basically makes it known to Io that she wants a shot at that belt. Io tells her, "Don't make me hurt you." But we find out there's going to be a non-title match between the two of them next week. I'm curious how they're going to book this face versus face match, but I think it's going to be a great opportunity for Shotzi. Then we see the beginning of what's a three-part arc on this episode, where Tegan Nox visits Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae at their home. Maybe she'll finally patch things up with her former best friend Candice. And so we see them kind of over the course of the evening. Dinner's very awkward. Johnny leaves to let the two ladies hash it out. And basically Tegan says that Candice has changed, but Candice says that Tegan doesn't understand the Gargano way, and that you say I've changed, but I've always steered you in the right path. I've never steered you wrong. So she's trying to talk Tegan into joining the Gargano way. She's very conflicted thinking about it. And then in the conclusion of this segment, they're toasting. It seems like all is well between the two of them. They start kind of throwing some barbs at each other about how neither of them have beat Io Shirai, and neither of them have been the champion. Who's going to be the champion first? Finally, Candice throws her salad at Tegan's face. She throws her drink at Candice's face. Johnny Gargano finally comes in trying to break it up, but he gets spaghetti dumped on him. Before you know it, the TV's broken, and Tegan scampers off, makes her escape, and Johnny's just sitting there with shaking his head while spaghetti falls and plops off his shoulder and everything. I thought this was a very entertaining thread throughout the night. It was good to see kind of the humanity of Candice as she's trying to negotiate and reason with Tegan, trying to get more her side of the story. And seeing Gargano, I love heel Johnny Gargano. I love that he's kind of got this balance of being kind of goofy and dorky in a way, but he backs it all up in the ring and everything. He's not that character at all, but in the ring, but his character outside of it and in these home sketches are really growing on me. So as far as non-match things are concerned, this was probably the highlight for me on NXT. It's time for another Thatch's Thatch Can wrestling seminar. This time it's about film study and knowing your opponent's weaknesses. Thatcher shows some clips of Damian Priest on the wall and shows how his weaknesses could be exploited with different holds and techniques and everything. He says he wants a piece of Damian Priest in the future for that North American Championship. Then later on the night we get a rebuttal from Priest where he says, "I'm going to give you my game plan for free. You don't have to study my tape, and I'll tell you what's going to happen." He also says that when they fight for the North American Championship next week, he won't be able to make Thatcher any uglier than he already is. That's kind of harsh, but next week's match should be good. Velveteen Dream takes on Ashanti the Adonis, which is a fairly ambitious name for someone in the Performance Center who's not been on TV all that much. But nevertheless, for a squash match, it was actually kind of some brief hope there because Ashanti's got a couple of big moves right out the gate, but a small thumb to the eye when the referee's back is turned is all it takes for Dream to hit the Dream Valley Driver, wins in decisive fashion, and then afterward he's jumped by Kushida. These two have beef stemming from a few weeks ago in the North American Championship qualifying series and everything. So Kushida just keeps working over Dream's arm repeatedly, some revenge, and that's going to set up some future clash down the line, obviously. Good to see Kushida back. This match itself, it was a means to an end. The match wasn't much to speak of, but it was all about the beatdown afterward. We see a vignette from the new tag champs as of last week, BREEZANGO. They've got some words for the former champs, Imperium, saying they lack sizzle. They just need a little bit of sizzle is all. Imperium have a rebuttal in the same video package saying that next week when they have their rematch for the championships, that BREEZANGO will be the shortest reigning tag team champs in NXT history. Assuming they don't win the belts back next week, all I can say is, wow, what a great reign that Imperium had with those tag belts. Yeah, they really were something, weren't they? Our next match sees Bronson Reed versus Austin Theory, who I missed when I was on my hiatus the last couple weeks. Austin Theory came back to TV. He's no longer a disciple of Seth Rollins. He's just back on the black and yellow brand. Apparently, his seedy allegations seem to have died down or have been addressed. It's never really been established what that is and everything, but he's back on NXT, so good for him. The story of this one is that Austin keeps he's a bit too big for his britches in this matchup here. He keeps forgetting that Bronson's much bigger than him. His back actually gives out partway near the end of the match because Bronson's just too heavy. He keeps trying to suplex him. Bronson flattens him with the big tsunami splash at the end. It was actually a pretty good match. The story they told was good because Austin, even though he was a smaller guy, keeping himself competitive in a variety of ways that weren't exactly all dirty, but I think, again, I'm really fast becoming a big Bronson Reed fan. He's becoming one of my favorites on NXT right now. A big reason for that, though, is his new entrance, his Titantron with him walking through the giant cityscape and the destruction. That is such a cool visual. I can't get enough of it. We get a humble and gracious post-match interview with Adam Cole backstage where he says he respects Finn Balor and the better man won on this night, but if there is a next time, the outcome will be different. It's really interesting how they're kind of leaning in with Adam Cole as a babyface all of a sudden. We saw that kind of manifest itself in the feud with Pat McAfee going into TakeOver, and now this promo here after the Finn, and also they shook hands and too sweet at each other also backstage. They showed that clip earlier in the night as well. It doesn't really jive well with what the rest of the Undisputed Era is doing, but we'll get to that in a little bit. We then see a promo from Mercedes Martinez outside the cage, where she talks about, how when the lion wants to be king, they don't go after the weak animals, they go after the toughest animal they can find and make a statement, and that when she's done with Rhea Ripley, she will not be done, she says, until there's nothing left of her in the cage. Speaking of the UE, Roderick Strong taking on Killian Dain in singles action. It's a fairly one-sided contest on Dain's part. He's pretty dominant in this thing. It takes, after a couple of distractions from Bobby Fish on the outside, it just takes literally one move, one knee to the dome for Roderick to win. So after taking all that punishment, it doesn't take much for him to beat Killian Dain, almost called him Kane, Killian Dain in the end. So after the match is over, though, Strong and Fish beat up Killian some more. Drake Maverick, who's been having some bit of a beef with Killian Dain as of late, he chases the UE out with an iron bar. He tries to make the save, but that backfires. Strong and Fish beat him up as well until Dain chases them out with the iron bar. So are the Undisputed Era faces or heels or what? I think, you can have them all be faces or all be heels, unless it's leading to some kind of dissension with the Undisputed Era where Cole is the noble hero and abandons the rest of them. You can't really have kind of a mix right now, the way I see it. So anyway, after they leave, Drake wants to thank Killian for saving him. Killian thinks about it for a second, but then ends up popping him in the face, and so they clearly still have some problems, but I'm going to make a bold prediction. Those two are totally winning next year's Dusty Classic. Main event time, steel cage match. It's billed as the Battle of the Badasses as Rhea Ripley takes on Mercedes Martinez. Mercedes throws weapons into the ring before the match even begins. Rhea jumps her from behind, and then the match finally begins when they're both in the cage. Oh, by the way, they brought a table in as well before the match officially began. These two just beat the hell out of each other here, not just with their bodies and with the cage, but also with the weapons. Again, it's kind of like the stuff with Adam Cole Finn Balor thing. It's really impossible to boil down what they do in this match to a couple of quips here and there. You just have to see the match for yourself. It's a pretty damn good cage match here. At one point, Robert Stone tries to get involved, but he gets cut off on the top of the cage by Rhea. He almost gets superplexed into the inside from the top of the cage, which would have been pretty impressive, but instead he just kind of dangled angles on the top of the cage for most of the rest of the match. Not really a factor for the rest of this thing, which is, I was kind of like waiting for something to happen there, but it didn't really materialize that way. Mercedes beats Rhea up with a kendo stick. She a neck breaker off the top rope. They set the table, but it backfires on Mercedes. A riptide from the second rope through the table. Rhea Ripley wins, and she is the queen badass here at NXT as the show draws to a close. I think it's great that Rhea wins here. I think they need to kind of keep her momentum going. I think ever since she lost the women's title at WrestleMania, she's been kind of, and then she's a lot of time off TV as well, but just kind of her return has been kind of aimless. Like, it's kind of similar to when Finn Balor came back last year. It kind of lost in the shuffle amongst kind of a stacked or otherwise disposed, women's division, where it's like, where does she really fit in that point? So, especially with Io, the babyface now is champion, where does Rhea fit in? They got to keep the momentum with her strong. I think Mercedes, like, it would have been nice if she kind of won the feud to really put her over, but there will be other feuds for her where she will look dominant, and this loss is not going to hurt her. Dynamite begins with a cold open of Tony Schiavone reporting from the parking lot as suddenly two big black SUVs pull up behind him facing each other. It's Chris Jericho and MJF popping out of their respective vehicles. There's a great moment here where Tony says, I want to interview you both. I want to talk about the one match everyone's talking about, and they both go simultaneously. Thank you, Tony. And then there's a bit of a love fest going on with these two, some mutual respect where Jericho says MJF was robbed at All Out. He guarantees MJF will be champion one day very soon. MJF says, I bet you'll be champion once again very soon, Chris. And they, go about their ways. They're very respectful and everything. Honor amongst thieves. And they both turn around, goes to a split screen of each of them going, what a loser. I just died at that point there. There's this twist at the end you didn't really see coming. And so, yeah, fantastic cold open. First match of the evening sees the Lucha Brothers take on the Jurassic Express. Very good Lucha things by Jungle Boy and Rey Fenix early on. I love Luchasaurus's big, top of the ropes choke slam. The slam before time's a great name for a move like that. Other great double team moves by the Lucha Brothers. In the end, Jungle Boy is able to kick out of the package pile driver stomp combo, and then they're trying to do a destroyer on him, but Jungle Jack counters it, and so Penta ends up hitting his own brother with the destroyer. Jungle Boy rolls up Fenix to win the match in kind of an upset there. And then afterwards, you see all this tension between the Lucha Brothers. Eddie Kingston and the Butcher and the Blade are outside. They come into the ring, and Kingston tries to play peacemaker. He tells them to shake hands and to make up, and after some tension, the two guys finally shake hands. Kingston wraps up the promo by reminding everyone he was never truly eliminated in the Battle Royal at All Out. Gives a wink to the camera. Makes me wonder if they're going to build on that. Probably not, but I am very interested in seeing where this alliance goes. When I first saw Kingston recruit the Butcher and the Blade and the Lucha Brothers, it was like, this is a team that doesn't really seem to have any kind of link with each other. Why does this team make sense? I'm still waiting to see that. I'm still waiting to see what the final verdict's going to be with Kingston as the leader, because we keep seeing him literally winking and nodding to the camera. So something's up with that. I'm really wondering what the payoff is going to be, but as long as he keep giving Kingston a live mic every week, I have no complaints. We get a promo from Lance Archer and Jake Roberts and his shiny veneers as they stand out in the rain and talk about how Moxley is going to sweat and piss himself in fear over Lance Archer. And then Archer speaks, saying that Moxley's been champion for far too long and it will come to an end very soon. Their title match will happen on October 14th. We then go to see Matt Hardy make his way to the ring to address his horrific fall during the Broken Rules match with Sammy Guevara at All Out, where he hits the back of his head on the concrete. They stop the match and then they restarted it to actually go to the finish. In his speech, Matt thanks the fans for all of their concern and support over the last several days. He sounds genuinely taken aback by all the love that he received as a result of that big, scary fall that we saw on Saturday. He says he will make a full recovery and considers himself the luckiest man alive. Gestures to his wife, Rebby Sky, who's out in the crowd with their newborn son, and he apologizes to his family, apologizes to the fans for giving them a scare. He says that the Broken Rules match wasn't what he wanted it to be, but he's glad that the vendetta with Sammy is over because it could have gotten a whole lot worse. I mean, how much worse than what we saw on Saturday? Anyone's guess. But he's got goals for the AEW Championship when he returns. He says his journey is not over. I'm going to say off the top that I think it's great that Matt is okay. I'm so happy that he's okay, that he's expected to make a full recovery. That's great. That being said, I maintain my opinion that they should have stopped the match and kept it stopped at the pay-per-view for safety reasons, just for precautionary purposes. There seems to be a lack of understanding among the internet hive mind just what a concussion is. When you are not unconscious like Matt Hardy was, that by definition is a concussion. I think the doctor made an absolutely bad call in letting him continue. And I bet if you asked Christopher Nowinski or anyone else with a glancing knowledge of concussions, they'd probably tell you the same thing. Fuck the stipulation. Screw the whole, well, if he lost, he was going to leave AEW. He's lucky he's alive. They could have easily thrown out, no contest, resolved it another day. Screw the stipulation. Screw the fact that Matt Hardy got up by muscle memory alone, which is a miracle in and of itself. For his own safety, they should have stopped the match and kept it stopped. Aubrey Edwards, God bless her, was the only person involved in that match, from the wrestlers to the referee to the doctor to the people in the booth who had a lick of common sense after he took that fall. Now, Tony Khan said on Twitter, oh, the MRIs and the CT scans say he doesn't have a concussion. Well, no kidding. That's not what MRIs and CT scans are supposed to look for. They're looking for brain bleeds, not concussions. So, you know, the amount of people who are defending AEW and Tony Khan and saying Matt should have continued because he got up is absolutely foolish. I mean, look at what happened with The Undertaker and Goldberg in Saudi Arabia. Look at Goldberg again when he headbutted the door before he came out for his entrance. And all these other recent examples of concussions. My God, Kairi Sane, Liv Morgan. The list goes on and on of people who've suffered concussions. Look how Corey Graves' career ended, or Christian's career ended, or Daniel Bryan's career the first time around, or Chris Nowinski's. Like, concussions are real, and if they're not properly treated immediately in some kind of some safety measure, then things can get really bad. Matt is very lucky that it didn't get worse than it did by him being allowed to continue. Again, muscle memory is great if you're a wrestler. If you get your bell rung, it's cool and valiant to see him get up like that, but he was not ready for it. It's truly mind-boggling to me because it just shows me there's a lot of fans out there that still don't have a very high regard for wrestler safety, but that's a whole other discussion for another time. But I will just say, again, I'm very glad that Matt's okay. I hope he makes a full recovery and can wrestle again. Just don't take so many risks next time. And I hope that AEW learns from this. I've said my piece. Orange Cassidy takes on Angelico. I know I can't remember the last time I saw the Hybrid 2 on Dynamite. It's a pretty short and sweet matchup here. Angelico tries to pull off his unique submission moves, but Orange handily wins in pretty short order with the Orange Punch. Afterward, though, Santana and Ortiz show up and beat up Orange in the ring. The best friends make the save, and then they challenge Santana and Ortiz to a parking lot fight next week, and they promise to bring the pain and to make Trent's mom proud. And so finally we'll get that retribution, hopefully, from when Santana and Ortiz destroyed Sue's van. Do it for Sue, guys. Alex Marvez outside the Young Bucks locker room hoping to get a word, but instead he gets a double super kick from Matt and Nick, who then slam the door in disgust. We find out later on they've been each fined $5,000 for that, but besides that, nothing of value was lost. Then we see Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian make their way to the ring. It's the question on everyone's mind, who's the best man going to be for Kip Sabian during he and Penelope's wedding? First person that comes out, we think it's Puff. No, it's not Puff. There's some confusion there. It's not you, Puff. Aw, sad to see him walk away. Up next, is it Brian Pillman Jr.? He comes out there, but it turns out more miscommunication. He misread a text saying, "You're the best, comma, man," as "you're the best man." Aw, sad. Brian Pillman leaves. "Get out of here, Jr.," says Kip. So who is the best man? Finally, we find out it's Miro. The former Rusev has now made his AEW debut. He's got blonde hair. He's got a Gucci shirt with Minnie and Mickey on it. It's a good looking fit. Miro looks really good here, and he's got a big pop for his return here. And if there's anyone who knows a thing or two about weddings as of late in the last year or so, it's Miro. It's slash Rusev. He grabs the mic and says, 10 years in the same house under the same glass ceiling, reaching for the brass rings. You can take the brass ring and shove it up your ass. He then says he is the best man because he's the best at Twitch, the best at wrestling, and he's all elite. Well, that was a welcome surprise. I was pleased as punch to see that Miro is back on television in AEW. You could write a book with how WWE screwed up and dropped the ball with Rusev on so many occasions over the years. I think he had every right to take a shot at them. And I know there's kind of a stigma, or there's a reputation that AEW has of taking too many shots at WWE. I think he gets one. He's allowed one of those, I think. And he definitely deserves it after the way he was treated in that company. So again, I'm not sure what the connection with he and Kip Sabian is, other than the fact they both have Twitch channels. But nevertheless, I'm happy to see Miro back on TV. We get some very interesting contrasting interviews with the former tag team champions, Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. The first one we see Tony Schiavone interviewing Hangman, going, "Hey man, how you doing, man? What's going on with that head of yours?" And Hangman's basically beating himself up. He says that the tag titles, they never should have lost them on Saturday to FTR, and it's all his fault. It's his fault for everything that's gone on between he and the Elite. He feels like his body is full of poison, but he is optimistic that he and Kenny can reconcile and regain the tag team championships. And that was a great promo. It wasn't very long, but some damn genuine emotion coming out of Hangman here. Almost on the verge of crying, it felt like at some point, talking about how like he's to blame for all the struggles between he and the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. It was really cool to see him put him in this very sympathetic light. Then on the opposite end, you've got Jim Ross interviewing Kenny Omega later on, and Kenny is basically, he's kind of flippant about everything, where he says, you know, you win belts, you lose belts, it's part of wrestling and everything. He talks about how he thought at the beginning of AEW, he thought he was going to be the ace of AEW, but then he was kind of left rudderless. But him teaming up with Page ultimately helped him find a new purpose in the tag ranks. And when he's asked by JR if he sees a reconciliation or anything, like what's he going to do now, what's his future, he really is kind of casting Hangman off to the side, saying, you know what, it's time for us to look into different things in our careers, and I'm going to go for the AEW championship again. Like, man, like, where is this going to go with Page and Omega? Like, when's that finally going to implode? They have two very different opinions on how of each other, and like where they're going to go from there. Like, that's very interesting to show like this real genuine sounding conflict between the two of them, where you don't really know where it's going to shake down, and I'm really digging this angle. In a no DQ, no countout match, Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss take on Chris Jericho and Jake Hager. Both sides have some bad blood. In the case of Janela and Jericho, literally, because Jericho bloodied Janela last week on Dynamite. Then at All Out, Sonny eliminated Jake Hager from the Battle Royal. Janela's got some chair attacks on Jericho, but Chris fights back. During the break, they set up a table on the outside. That's going to come in handy for later. At one point, Hager goes for like a Vader bomb onto Sonny, who's got like the trash can on top of him, but then he picks it up like this, like he's benching it, and then Hager just like hits the trash can and it stops his momentum cold, which I don't think that's how it works. Either Sonny has tremendous strength to be able to hold that up in place and it doesn't buckle at all under Jake's weight, or it looked kind of a weird spot. Anyway, in the end, Hager slams Janela through the table on the outside. Big fiery comeback by Sonny, but the fire is put out with a fire extinguisher by Jericho that allows Hager to hit a Uranagi on Sonny to win the match. And then afterward, well, first of all, I will say, for a match where like 3 of the 4 competitors aren't really known for like no DQ, kind of like weapons-based matches, I think they handle it pretty well. And then afterward, Jericho on the microphone basically making his intentions known that he and Hager will be climbing through the tag ranks together and eventually want a shot at the AEW tag titles, which that could be interesting. I mean, it's been a long time since Jericho was exclusively like a tag team guy or was in a tag team title program. Been many years since that, so I'm really curious to see where that goes. I think it's kind of more, it tells you more of like Jericho's ability kind of putting other people over, not just his partner Jake Hager, but the people they're fighting with. And we've seen that, you know, how his kind of selflessness in the ring, especially with the feud with Orange Cassidy, for example. So curious to see how that goes. We go to an MJF campaign meeting where he says that Jon Moxley cheated to win it All Out. He blames his entire campaign staff for the loss and he fires a lot of them. He doesn't go to fire Wardlow though. Wardlow gets kind of mad at MJF here, but MJF basically says, you know, I own you, and if you cross me, then I will make you and your family suffer. I'll put you out in the streets and everything. And then he says, you know, it's time to plan to get back on top. Wardlow looks very kind of resentful, kind of swallowing his pride. Ooh, the minute that he turns on MJF, it's going to be such a great moment. Speaking of the champion, we see Jon Moxley backstage cutting a fiery promo where he says the only way to become champion is to crawl through a mile of crap and to climb a mountain on the other side. He says he knows Lance Archer's a tough man. Everyone thinks he's going to go through the wood chipper when he faces Archer, but he knows that in his soul he's unstoppable, and who would bet against him? We then go back to the ring and we see a bunch of AEW tag teams surrounding the ring, and inside the ring are FTR and Tully Blanchard celebrating the big tag title win at All Out. There is a cake in the ring, and right away I go, that can't end well. On the microphone, FTR said they may be undefeated, but you know, they worked hard for each of those wins. They throw shade at SCU for being old. They say that, hey, Billy parentheses Gunn is in a second-rate Hall of Fame, and then they make fun of Jurassic Express, basically calling them like cosplay losers, essentially. The Jurassic Express get in the ring, and FTR try and beat them up, but they get thwarted. They powder out of the ring, and Marco Stunt dumps the cooler of ice from the table onto them, and that's pretty much where it ends. Like at that point, like the Jurassic Express cut the cake and they serve it to the other wrestlers, and there's having cake on plates, which, great, that's very wholesome, but man, the rules and the standards of professional wrestling are being thrown out every single week on Dynamite. Someone was supposed to land face first in that cake, and it didn't happen. I'm disappointed. Taz joins the commentary team tonight for a single segment in which Darby Allin's music plays, but Ricky Stark emerges dressed as Darby. He mocks Allin and calls him reckless and says if he does come back, Ricky Starks will make him pay. I do like, what I'm seeing from Starks here. I love his delivery, how he's presented here. He's a great heel promo. It makes me really want to see what Darby Allin's going to do when he eventually comes back to feud with Ricky. Ty Conti, formerly of NXT, is officially signed to AEW as of today, and her reward is a match with Nyla Rose on Dynamite. And Nyla's manager, Vicky Guerrero, occasionally cheating on her behalf, which seems kind of unnecessary for a big bruiser like Nyla. Ty makes it a fight though. She's got Nyla in a big armbar, but Nyla's too strong, hits the Beast Bomb out of the armbar to win the match. After the match, Vicky shrieks on the mic that the Vicious Vixens, that's them, are there to stay. They go to beat up Ty some more, but then Hikaru Shida shows up and makes the save with the kendo stick. Nyla and Vicky back away, and that's the end of that. The champion and the former champion. Seems like they're building up some sort of future clash with them. As much as I'd like to see that, because I enjoyed their title match several months ago at Double or Nothing. Let's see some more. Let's use some of that time to build up some more people. Again, the reason they brought in Thunder Rosa for All Out, my understanding of it, or my perception of it, is because there was no one really built up for that in time. So is it Nyla Rose? Maybe, but what about somebody else? Main event time, TNT Championship match as Mr. Brodie Lee defends against Dustin Rhodes. Rhodes scored the pinfall on the 8-man tag at All Out, which basically granted him this title match here. They brawl before the bell even rings. Brodie gets a lot of offense in, though, once the match officially begins. And if there's anyone on AEW's roster who can make you feel something as a fan, as a viewer, it's Dustin. His fiery comeback is incredible. He hits like a Hurricane Rana from the second rope, and the Code Red, and the Crossroads, but Brodie kicks out of all that stuff. John Silver tries to interfere from the Dark Order, but it backfires. Dustin with a pile driver. Brodie Lee was able to grab the ropes. Great back and forth. Ultimately, Lee hits the discus lariat to win and retain the hard-fought match. Hell of a main event. I love this match here. Then afterward, the rest of the Dark Order come out to celebrate. They have like QT Marshall's like unconscious body, and they dump it in the ring next to Dustin. Colt Cabana's like, yes, you did it, Brodie. That's awesome. And then Brodie's still mad at Colt. Colt's still confused to why Brodie's yelling at him. Evil Uno, once again, like on Saturday, plays good cop and tries to keep Colt away from the angry dad, essentially. And that's how they also, by the way, they take Dustin to Dick Kick City to close out the show. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they threw at you here at the end here. Dark Order looking strong here, probably the strongest they've looked in a very long time in this very emphatic way. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, NXT or AEW Dynamite. And this week my choice is Dynamite. 3 words: story, story, story. AEW saw tons of stories advance in really interesting ways this week. Like, what's going on with the Elite? When will Wardlow finally snap on MJF? Who can stop the Dark Order? What's going on with Eddie Kingston's group? So many things happening on this show that left me wanting more when it came to stories and characters. NXT, I loved the Finn Balor Adam Cole match, and I loved the Mercedes Martinez Rhea Ripley cage match. And I'll say once again, I love the heel Garganos and their interaction with Tegan Nox. The threat they had was great. It was by no means a bad show. There was terrific wrestling, but AEW and their stories is what kept me hooked. But let me know what you thought about NXT and AEW this week in the comments section below. What do you think about Miro's debut in AEW? I want to hear your comments on that. As far as next week's Wednesday Warfare goes, I'm either going to film it Wednesday night or Thursday night, depending on what's going on with the NBA Finals. Also, stay tuned to the channel this Friday morning for my interview with ROH wrestler Tracy Williams as he gets ready for the first round of the Pure Championship Tournament starting this weekend. Until then, folks, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.